My name is Paulo, and I could sound a little bit weird. I got some flu, but it's not a problem for us if we decide to talk a little bit about JS. The main goal of my today's speech is maybe change a little bit the way how you choosing your tools for your next projects, and maybe think a little bit out of the box how you usually think about your JS tools and architecture of those frameworks and libraries that you're using in your project. The best way to start my speech is to talk about the goal of JavaScript in actually history of JavaScript as a web development language. Nowadays, JS is the most popular language for web development, but like long time ago, it was created like some sort of glue between the HTML. So like first browsers appear around like 1993. One of the most popular Netscape appear like year before, and year after, sorry, and a lot of like popular developers like Microsoft also start thinking some extra language, scripting language, to provide some extra functionality for their application, for their like HTML pages. And this become like all of them start doing this in parallel. A lot of them like start putting pretty simple logic. Many of them just providing some small scripting stuff for your application. Like Brandon which created like JavaScript, actually start do it and implement it is much easier way to write some application if you used to write just regular Java before, and this one is some pretty simple language to provide some scripting functionality to your browsers. And Microsoft created some similar tools for these purposes, but in 1997, ECMA organization started providing first standards for this and make it like global, available, and for all browsers that we have, thankfully, like ECMA standardization, we have it similar for all browsers. A lot of like main technologies, like earlier we have like JSON and Ajax functionality that are created and actually defined how JS would be used in applications. And the first like global framework or library, how it's supposed to think about jQuery, appear in the meaning of actually JSON and Ajax stuff, Ajax functionality. So what actually jQuery provide for us? This is like few examples of web applications, how it's actually designed and how it's actually styled and built. It's Yahoo and eBay of those times. So the main goal is actually manipulate and some data on the application on a page, provide some extra UI components, UI styled elements with some interactive functionality. So you have like different pop-ups, modals, some super buried date pickers, and so on. So you don't need to type like just your date in correct format. You just pick it in interesting UI form. jQuery is become super popular library and some sort of but it's not a framework in those meaning that we have right now. It was a library. It has just a group of needed functions that just cover some manipulation with DOM elements, making some asynchronous requests, and grabbing all some data and put it in some variant of HTML or so in the page. So, for example, here is like examples of how basic setup for jQuery project usually look like. It's like CDN included libraries one by one, and the main like file that you creating and that you write, and usually manipulate with the $sign. Was like the main short key for all of functions that jQuery has. And as you see, we refers to some classes and elements. We just trying to find it in our DOM and just manipulating with small pieces of those HTML that we have, or generate something new based on some data that we getting from some API endpoint. So the end result would be like some HTML updates on the page. The main benefit, the main like of jQuery, it was pretty small. And for those internet connections, for example, we could see that it's like smaller, 18% for like than React library, but for super slow internet connection, it actually mean like a lot of time that you need. But it also includes some problems, actually. Since we're using like jQuery libraries and different components just loaded one by one, we got a problem when one library actually need to be loaded before another one. And the problem of actually those order of the libraries is super important for such project based on jQuery. Nowadays, it's possible to handle such problems, but in those period of time, it was the main problem that we have, and those spaghetti code that we have with different function of jQuery implementation. And as we see, the main idea and goal is just manipulate with some elements on the page. But since like internet grows, we getting more and more tools. Internet of speed become more and more faster, and some interesting tools like Chrome V8 engine appear, and just in a year, one guy decided that it would be fun to run some JS code inside the console and create a Node.js as we believe, like in one night. After that, you would see that like one after another appear a lot of tools that actually describe how we see and understand JS right now. ECMAScript 5 provide a lot of standardization and tooling that actually used and built in all browsers right now, and allows us to use a lot of modern functions. After that, we see like appear a lot of frameworks and like Angular, React, Vue.js, just like one after another. Each of them like include experience of previous one. And if we would see, so what's the reasons of new frameworks appear, it's actually the applications become bigger and bigger. Complexity of applications, complexity of code that we need to run and manage become bigger and bigger. We have to provide like better speed optimization, code optimization, and so on. We need some build tools, build instruments to provide and optimize our code. And we need more flexible and understandable code structure, which actually provide for us more flexible development process and so on. So from history, we would see that like those main three players that actually appear, and their idea that they like present themselves really different in a way how developers should actually look of them. All of them start naming frameworks, and in my point, it's like the problem because Angular appeared like the first one. Angular bring the full tool set that you probably need in your project, with built-in like systems, different applications, libraries, different libraries, patterns, and so on. It's become super powerful. And actually, if you're creating some Angular application, you for main architecture, everything that you need would be built in, and you could just include it with some Angular library or path and so on. And and possibly we could see the main architecture patterns that they like main principle that they're trying to provide is some kind of MVC, where like we have some model, some view presentation, some controller data that manage our structure, and so on. Like an opposite side of this appear another framework which is named like React, and an opposite that like it says that we are presenting React not like a framework, we present React like a library, but still a lot of us like name it framework, but React present pretty small library. It's possible like an all time included same way as jQuery, and it's like it's maybe some part of marketing where it was when it was developed, they're trying to say that you could develop in the same way that you used to. So you no need to learn new building tools, stuff, and so on. You could create same files, include same way that you used to your libraries in the end of the file with a bunch of different one. But the first one would be not jQuery, would be React. And all of your code and manipulation with elements would be here like the same that you used to, but it's possible like to use it with different libraries and so on. So actually in architecture structure, view becomes super small and just present view element to the full application structure, and cover just same React needs that we used to do with jQuery. Vue.js appeared like the next one, and it's like cover both experience of React and Angular, of Angular and Vue, sorry, and it's also pretend to be a library. It's also pretend to be that I'm pretty small. You could just include me to the page and so on with CDN. You don't need any build tool, but in opposite side, it present the same like instruments and so on, and providing them as with a bunch of best practices and so on. Included model view model system building, and providing some actually patterns, architecture patterns to your application. So you should like have some mounting point for your application in Vue inside of your HTML page and so on. So those three frameworks appear like almost in the same time, but presenting pretty different variants of how you to write your JS application, and which level of managing of your JavaScript code would be present in your HTML page. But what actually was created by those frameworks, and what kind of application we started doing with it? The first one that we could see, it's idea of client-side rendering that actually present in a small part of jQuery projects. So when we get in some data and load more and more, for example, like other elements and so on. So client-side rendering grows from small element on the page to the full page. Idea was pretty simple. So we just grabbing the instead of making like multiple requests to the server, like HTML, like you making some request, server responds you with HTML page and so on. You just getting one page with built-in JS, and JS manage everything that you need to see in your application, and pretending that you're actually making those requests, and in somewhere behind just making Ajax request and getting your data and present you in a different form of view. It's much easier to manage such templates and so on. You don't need to, you could like separate your template logic in your file structure, which is like built-in frameworks. So it's those kind of pattern of development start become more and more popular. It's much easier like to scale your application and so on, but the main goal like for those kind of application, you would see that like for your base framework like Vue or React, for example, you need to add some small library. For Angular, it's too, but it's some kind of built-in, so we could say that it's for Angular, it's not such relevant, but it's also a small separate part that you add into your base framework architecture. And this extra library actually provides for us this pattern. It's pretending for browser history that we are actually making some sort of requests and changing the pages. You could see your browser history like available, and it would be almost the same that the classic website provide for us HTML responses. But it's perfect for like human users. It's not perfect for such thing like bots and so on, because everything that bot would see is some HTML setup structure with one element of data and nothing inside. It's one of the problems when Google start like searching of your applications like this. They couldn't understand what actually your page represents. So all those mechanisms that they used to and run and check and measure your pages become fully broken since page actually render in the client side. And this is a problem number two. For browsers should become more and more powerful. If we have to render some huge amount of data for some maps and so on, I don't know, or some small listing and so on, it's pretty related to the power of the browser. And actually, for some mobile devices, it's not super recommended pattern to actually implement. For some period of time, it was actually the problem. Nowadays, it's like less problem, but still, we have to deal with it, and we have to include in our like architecture that we need some resources to actually render something in client side. And also ability with and problems with the secure issues. A lot of single page applications has to communicate with the server with direct HTML API requests, and it's become a problem to the security, because it's more and more problems. It's possible to make some cross-site requests and so on. So you need to add some extra security layers and security checks to your API, because API is like open source of your data, and probably you could create such API architecture that could cover these problems. So as you see, it's like not a perfect pattern. A lot of application couldn't deal with this, even like with like SEO stuff. So in other part, we find another pattern that allowed us to deal with some problems. And it's become like pretty old in fashion and popular pattern that includes server-side rendering. So no need to manage something on a server on the client side. If we would render our page in a server as we did it before with some Python, Ruby, PHP, or whatever Java application C you would like to do, so it's generate just an HTML and send it to the client. So why we not do it like this? Yeah, it's also possible. So you just need to include some extra libraries. You just take in your favorite framework, include some road, store libraries, and so on. Provide pretty complex build process for this. And after that, you get in plus we need some extra server that actually run your application. So we need some Node.js part. We're running some pretty complex build process, and as a result of this process, we would have some server and client sides of our application, and actually server that would run this application and share it, making some, I don't know, database requests, pre-render some part of our application and share it as HTML. So what do we have in this way of developing application? We would have definitely better SEO optimization, because HTML page would be rendered already. So a lot of elements would be like marked, and it's much easier for bots to understand actually what your page present to the world. We have much better improved security because it's possible to generate some extra tokens to your HTML page and track some kind of extra security layer with this token. So you definitely know that the request from this HTML page to this endpoint made by a human, which request actually before this page. So and so on. It's improve initial time because of the load of the page, because we don't need to render anything, almost anything, like in the client side, and the way that user can start searching and looking through our application become more faster. So, and as a bonus, we've got better accessibility for different text readers and so on. So for different users with disabilities, they're using some extra tools for the application, and which read some HTML that, as we remember, it's already pre-built. So your application become in this way a little bit better. So, but still, as you see, we have some kind of frameworks. We have like different patterns of how we use them, but in both patterns, we have to add some extra libraries, extra components on top of those frameworks and those like applications that we're building. We're building not just with Vue, React, or even Angular. We build it with Vue, React, Angular, plus extra libraries, some libraries, which cover some functionality, some architecture solutions, and so on. And in this way, like if we decide to simplify our development process and combine all those best practices of all those recommended libraries and group it together and build it together, we would have some kind of frameworks, but it's not the frameworks because it's already built on top of frameworks, and like community start name it as a meta frameworks. It's meta not through they used to some kind of to the Facebook or some created by Facebook or created like for virtual reality or so on. So it's not about those meta. It's about some meta functionality maybe and meta patterns and some common libraries and so on that which they're using, and those frameworks appear actually, and as you see, they have some problems with naming, but at least 3 of them. And but the idea that which they're bringing to us is provide some simplified way to manage all those functionality, architecture, structure, some best practices, and so on, just group in together with your framework, and like provide some better way how to organize your code and so on. So let's name it. One of them, first of them, it's Nest.js. It's like it's definitely not all meta frameworks. It's just some pretty popular of them. I would say that like I'm used to with few of them, and idea that actually they're bringing to us, it's pretty important to understand. But let's closely to the like idea of those meta frameworks. Nest.js, pretty powerful tool. It's it's using like mostly TypeScript for code base. It's using some MVC pattern to provide the structure of the application. All of them actually providing some superpowers like modular system. You could find some modules, plugins, and so on that's possible to use with Next, Nest, Vue, Svitla Kit, and so on. So it's possible to create a plugin not just for your React or Vue or Svitla or Angular application. It's possible to create it directly for some functionality that covers meta frameworks. They actually, or maybe like all of them, not bothering you with routing stuff. They provide an automatically based routing system, which is definitely pretty powerful. If you need something, you could change some routing logic in configuration files for those frameworks, but usually for your daily needs, it's fully enough. You just provide correct folder and file structure, and it would be automatically converted to the routing system, and with some extra parameters. All of them providing like built-in server-side rendering, so you could create everything that I'm describing here, like by your favorite framework, include needed libraries. But all of those frameworks providing such configuration in a different layer. So you would have one config file for a framework, and just changing some parameters in these files, you change your build system from single page application to a server-side rendering. Yeah, it's also some like possible problems, some nuances and edge cases, but it's like much easier than you would start doing it by yourself. And you would definitely cover like with some problems, code organizations, and so on. Here we got in everything from the box. Like all of them actually providing TypeScript support, and it's pretty important in our modern modern waves. We see that like the main concurrent for JavaScript is TypeScript, and like all of them allows you to use TypeScript for your application, and in this way it changes like a lot of change in your architecture and in your structure of your project, actually, and the pattern how you create your application. Because TypeScript, it's some kind of everything's good that we have in our JavaScript is TypeScript. So I would say that all frameworks and meta frameworks become super look like one to another when you start writing in a TypeScript. All those abstractions, all those code, all those design patterns, and so on that you start using with a TypeScript, it would be much easier to see and find if you start using it in different frameworks. And here's like the one pretty main and interesting idea that I would like to share with you, that those frameworks are not perfect, and probably they getting some extra layer of abstractions for us, and maybe not covering like all problems that we have. So like extra abstraction is some extra knowledge that we need to run to our command. So if some guy decide to join to our team and we are like already using some of those meta frameworks, which is not familiar to him, he would need some extra time to learn actually what it is and how to do some solutions in your application in some sort of way. Because usually those kind of frameworks providing like architecture, code organization stuff, and so on, like in lower layers. And it's actually help for some start for bigger projects. But the main goal, if you start using like meta frameworks, you getting as a developer, if you not shy to switch from your favorite React to Vue or Angular and start using it in a level of meta framework. Because a lot of architecture and design patterns and problems were like grouped together, and it's pretty the same in all of those kind of frameworks. It's much easier to see some design and architecture patterns in different meta frameworks if you start using it, and great ideas of code organization, like dependency injections, I don't know, some patterns and so on, it would be much easier to see if you start using like different meta frameworks. And the idea actually that the patterns in this way become some sort of universal language for application design. Some reusable solutions that is like commonly cover some problems that we have in our software design it would be much easier to understand and organize your application. It's much easier to modify your code. Some behavior perspectives and some other solutions that you find in one framework, you definitely could see in some other way in another framework. And some solutions regarding grading and architecture structure that we discussed previously, it's also much easier to see if you're switching like from one tool to another, and you would understand like the main goal and the main presentation of those kind of frameworks that we used to name like a framework is pretty small. Everything around and on top of those framework define the meta architecture and meta patterns of our like applications of next days. For many of tools, like for example, I here mentioned like Ionic, it's definitely not a problem which view you would use to using the Ionic framework. And a lot of Node.js stacks for writing like applications, pretty popular in like Maven and Maven, using the same meta idea that you could choose needed like libraries, needed frameworks, combine them in the needed like parameters, and include all better architecture and design patterns to your application. And here is like the goal of my presentation, actually, to share with you ideas of that I found while I'm using like those meta frameworks. That architecture and design patterns is much easier to understand and find either than like learning the next framework. So if you understand like the core of why it built in this way, it would be much easier to understand why in other framework or another application we're building it in that way or another. And here is like final joke that I'm asked to write about meta frameworks in ChatGPT, and it's looked like that he knows something about why actually developers start using meta frameworks. Here's like the end of my speech. I would like to thank you and hope like next day when you start doing some new applications, you would think in about your application like a combination of patterns and make your best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now, guys, time for questions. We have several questions in a chat, 2 questions to be precisely. And if you don't want to type a question, but want to talk to us, please push raise hand button and I will unmute you. So, and please, Pavlo, read the question before answering it. So the question will be on the recording as well.
I just see 3 of them. Is it correct?
One comment is from me. Yeah, now 3 questions, and we have, by the way, person who wants to talk to us. I think that we should start from this one.
Yeah.
Artem, hello. Hi.
Hello. Hey guys. So I have one question regarding Nest.js. You mentioned it as a meta framework, right? So in comparison to Next and Next, if I'm not mistaken, so those are basically frameworks for server-side rendering for React and Vue accordingly. But actually, Nest is something for traditional API, as far as I know. So could you please comment a bit on that?
It's about like common use of those frameworks. Yeah, they definitely like created for different like purposes, and some of them are more common to use like for building Yeah, Nest actually, it's super popular to build some micro frameworks, but it's not a problem actually to generate some single page application or some application with a server-side rendering. So it's possible to name it. So the main idea actually that it's bringing, if you like look on it and look in some Angular and in parallel in like, I don't know, some Next, you would find some close patterns like architecture and design patterns that are the same in both frameworks. So the idea actually is not like compare them. They're definitely like created for different builds. It's possible to see some design patterns, and if you're like familiar with those patterns and you understand that for some applications you need some stuff like, I don't know, server-side rendering. For some of them you need server-side rendering. For some of them you need some complex routing stuff, or you're building more like API layered application. You more understand which tools to choose. So the idea mostly on this pitch is like which tools to choose and how to use it. So, but
okay.
it's possible to create single page application with Nest easily. So why not?
Yeah. Basically, my question was mostly in a nutshell, what makes a framework a meta framework? So if some others are server-side rendering frameworks that are based on top of some front-end frameworks, right? So in comparison, Nest, is it meta framework because it has like higher layer of abstraction than, for example, Express, and actually Express and such could be used as transport layer. So the meta framework is something that just build on top. So it's not, especially for front end, right?
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit like have less connection and miss a little bit some and.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. I can just repeat. So my question was, what actually makes a framework a meta framework? So did I get you right that it's just ability of framework to work with some another framework? For example, Nest is able to use Express and Fastify and such as transport layer. So is it the thing that makes it meta framework?
Yeah. The idea is actually, yes, that you could the idea is actually coming that from the problem that we don't have like correct naming for a framework. We don't have such like normal understanding what actually a framework, because those things that we are naming framework are probably not the frameworks. And meta is some part of it's more about extra layer and extra abstraction that we bring on top of some small library or small framework, that how to name it. And on top of this, you bring in some extra patterns, extra technologies, extra architecture, and it's become meta framework. So idea like this, but it's also like not the finished one. It's like some sort of naming that start popular, but some of frameworks saying that they're meta, but they are not, and so on. It's like a lot of misunderstanding on this, I would say. So we could switch to the next one. Hello. Oh.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I was muted all the time, and I didn't understand why nobody answers me. Alexei, hello. Yeah, I unmuted you, so you can unmute yourself now and talk to us. Hello. Oh,
Hello. I've also got some internet connection issues.
No, I think that something maybe was microphone. Alexei, can you type your question maybe, because because we cannot hear you, unfortunately. Okay, we have another question from Artem. Hello, Artem.
Hey guys, hi Pavlo.
Hello.
So as I see is a lot of questions in the chat, but okay, I'm gonna introduce my question. It's not a question, it's suggestion. As I understand, first question was what a meta framework you will choose if you imagine that you have to choose one framework and use it whole life. So my advice, guys, is search market and look what the most popular job offers. I mean, what technology is most popular in Dove, for example? And I think it will be React and Next.js. But for me, I'm a draw Vue.js and Next.js. What did you say, Paula? What is your favorite?
I got some problems with internet connection. Da-na-na-na-na.
But have you heard the question or not? Hello? Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got some connection issue. I'm reading the chat, so like I see the, for example, question regarding from, for example, Richard asking like what have you used to Maron and Maven stacks? Have you preference between them? Actually, it's the main question usually between those stacks, but which one to choose? React is actually a little bit more faster in the render process, Vue a little bit more comfortable in code organization and so on, in my opinion. And it's mostly a question, like if we're talking about like meta perspective, when you're choosing your like patterns and so on, when you're choosing like those stacks, it depends actually on application that you're trying to build. If it would be some client-side application, or it would be some server-side and focus it just for some admins and so on, it actually depends. And for some would be much easier. For some resources, it also depends on the team, on the knowledge of the team that you're trying to share. So if you have already built in some Vue or React, for example, in your project, and for some developers, it would be much easier to understand it. Just use those tools that you have. So like it's my opinion in this way. And another one I see like from Bogdan, getting everything out of the box means getting a lot of restriction decided by the tool. Yeah, it's like a bonus and it's like a problem. It's things that like probably if you would like some to add, for example, if you'd like to add to Next some library, you would definitely need to create a plugin, and it's some extra overhead that you need to manage in a Next application. So but the way how it do it, the way how this process did, and the way how Next manages those dependencies, in my opinion, is brilliant. But I'm not sure that for all level of projects you need such architecture design, like to manage some dependencies and so on. So balance between them is like some predicted story for your project. You just looking forward in some possible business requests and trying to understand what you actually need. If it's some client-side application with some sort of like libraries just for, I don't know, some client side, and if need some C optimization and need some extra parameters and so on. So you're choosing one. If you need some server-based, as I mentioned before, some API and some small admin panel. So you don't need like extra tool. But if you're using them, they provide a lot of like automatization, and probably scalability would be much easier and so on. So it's definitely depends on the like business requests. Maybe you have some other questions.
Yeah, we have more of them in chat. So yeah. Seems like this one you missed. Is it possible to program GPT chat for code analysis and embed GPT chat into a Metaverse program and system?
I don't know, it's pretty young system, and like in my opinion, ChatGPT is like we already have some artificial intelligence for code. It's actually Copilot. So if you'd like discuss something with a code based, so definitely use Copilot. ChatGPT is like a pretty nice guy somewhere in a bar, like. So while you're drinking the beer, he would like describe everything for you, even how the solar system built, and so on. So I'm not sure that like, but if you be like trying to build some ChatGPT API to your application, yeah, it's definitely would be a pretty popular library if it's still not exist. I'm definitely sure some guy already write JS library for ChatGPT API. If it's available.
Yeah, seems like we have a comment for this question, a new one at the bottom of the chat. Do you see it?
Could you repeat one more time?
Yeah, something with connection. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Alexei,
yeah.
Alexei, it was your question, and maybe we can now hear you. I'm not sure, but let's try. Alexei, are you with us? Oh, the same. We cannot hear you. I don't know why. You are not muted, but seems like maybe something with microphone. We have Alexei left us a comment to this question. Maybe it will help you to, I don't know, be more precisely. Now you can see it. Now Chat GPT.
Yeah. I'm not a specialist of this, and I'm like more about JavaScript code. So like it's hard to say something like about those metaverse. So as I mentioned, like during the slides, meta, it's not about just like metaverse or meta systems. Yaroslav typing. Are there any CMS based on any meta frameworks you could recommend to work now? Boom. Actually, I'm not in touch with this question, but I'm definitely sure that we have some CMS on top of this. Not super familiar. I would say that like in those CMS, like for JavaScript, I've seen a lot of them, but none of them just the way how JavaScript developers actually creating such thing like CMSs and so on is usually based with some Firebase or some code-based like flow with some Gatsby or some other stuff that like actually make the process of developing like this super easy. Yeah, so usually it's some extra stuff. Not like CMS was mostly popular as far as I know, like in PHP and so on. So I'm not sure about this.
Okay, we have a new question.
Is it for production? It's definitely for production. Many of frameworks actually getting like few major iteration, like I'm more in touch with Nuxt.js, for example, and like difference between second and third one is pretty decent, and like it's bringing a lot of functionality. It's super stable, and it's super scalable. It's much easier to scale application in some nest or whatever you choose. It's definitely for productions, because it's already like including on top of some Express or some Vue or React, it's including like some extra functionality, extra patterns, extra solutions that you probably miss in your architecture, like when you just creating from scratch those functionalities. So it basically like covers some of possible problems that you could like put in your project. So yeah, so it's not just for proof of concept. Yeah, I'm definitely recommend to touch it in the production.
Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe you answered this question, but still, Maria asked you, what is important when choosing a framework?
It's like choosing a framework. Important is choosing like the tool that will help you, not make some problems for your through the like architecture. If you just creating small application and choosing React, you probably super fast in React, or you've planned like to grow this small application to super big. If you're choosing like React for some pretty big project, you need to count that you have to add a lot of functionality and architecture decisions and solutions on top of the React to make it actually a pretty good scalable application, and that application that you would happy to write and update in a few years. So you definitely need to provide some structure, some architecture solutions. Be very like super important to choose like correct libraries and so on and so on and so on. So in future you would be super happy to manage this app. Yeah. So it depends like on business, on your application and so on. Yeah.